Hello friends, I'm Father Bryan Brooks, the pastor of the Church of St. Benedict in Brooklyn, Oklahoma. I'm here to offer another movie review, one that is timely with Christmas quickly approaching. This review is about a movie that is considered a holiday classic, It's a Wonderful Life. Released in 1946, this year marks its 75th anniversary of its making. Now, interesting, although today it's considered this great classic film, also it received 5 Academy Awards when it was first released. It wasn't a big hit when it came out in the theaters, neither critically or financially. It really wasn't until about the mid-1970s, after the copyrights to the film had expired, that local television stations began to broadcast, especially at Christmas. Then it's when it becomes gains this status as this holiday classic that it enjoys today. The film is produced and directed by Frank Capra. It stars Jimmy Stewart, Donna Reed, Lionel Barrymore, who also, by the way, is the granduncle of the actress Drew Barrymore, and also it stars Thomas Mitchell. The story takes place in the fictional town of Bedford Falls in the first part of the 20th century. The protagonist is George Bailey. He's played by Jimmy Stewart. He's a young man who wants nothing more than to leave what he considers to be this little backward town and to go off to the world and do big things. He's going to build bridges, build skyscrapers, his big dreams. But as what often happens, life gets in the way. He winds up staying in Bedford Falls and to run the family business, which is the Bailey Building and Loan, a small community bank that has been established by his father Peter and his uncle Billy. Now, the building and loan plays a vital role in that life of the local community. It provides low-interest loans for people in the community, especially those that are working class as well as immigrants, to where they can be able to get the loans to start their own small businesses, be able to get the loans to build decent housing, to provide a better future for themselves and for their children. Now, the antagonist of the movie is a guy named Mr. Potter. He's played by Lionel Barrymore. Potter is the wealthiest and the meanest man in Bedford Falls. He pretty much controls everything in town except the building and loan. He keeps everybody as much as he can under his thumb, and most of the working class people, they live in slums that he owns. The story begins on Christmas Eve of 1945. Through a mistake made by his uncle, George is about to be arrested for embezzlement. It's going to mean prison for him and scandal and ruin to his family. He's driven to the point of despair so much that he's now on the verge of taking his own life. You know, for a movie that's sometimes been criticized as being overly sentimental and corny, it's got a pretty dark undertone. Now, at this point, George's guardian angel is sent from heaven to intervene. And George is shown what type of place Bedford Falls would be if he'd never been born. Basically, think of it as this alternative universe in which he does not exist. And a little bit of a spoiler, it's not a pretty place. Certainly, there's a thing that life is the most precious gift that God can give. We hear that right at the very beginning of the story. There's also the value that each and every life has, and also the effect that each life has on the lives of so many others. We're shown that literally the life-changing impact that George has on the people of Bedford Falls, not only there, but also literally on thousands of people far outside the city. But allow me to suggest a related theme to It's a Wonderful Life. It shows us much more, there's a lot more depth to this film than it's sometimes given credit. It just can't be written off as some kind of a Hallmark Christmas feel-good fluff movie. Now, no, well, I guess apologies to all those who are big fans of the Hallmark Christmas fluff movies. This theme has to do with culture, meaning what a group of people value and what they don't value. And certainly, to a certain degree, we're products of the time and place in which we live. But cultures, they just don't appear out of thin air. They are an embodiment of the virtues and also sometimes the vices of the people who live there, of that time and place. And we can create a culture that values life, values virtue, or we can create a culture that doesn't. It values vice, values death. You know, today we hear often the phrase, people who are cultural influencers, to describe those who want to try to mold communities, mold people to their set of values. Now, with this theme in mind, there's some things to look for if you've seen the movie. Pay attention to what George Bailey values. It includes family, friends, authentic friendships, community, and sacrifices made for the good of others. And very much at the heart is that he recognizes the dignity of each person regardless of their status in life, regardless of who they are, regardless if they've got money, if they don't have money, regardless of whether they have a good reputation or not so good reputation. This is the culture of the Bailey family, and those around them, they take on these values. And we certainly see that in George's wife, Mary, who's played by Donna Reed. On the day of their wedding, Mary shows that she values what George values. And she becomes something, I think, kind of the moral heart of the story. So there's also a strong theme about marriage and family in this movie. Frank Capra, the film's producer and director, immigrated to the United States from Italy, I think around the age of 3 or 4. He became a highly successful filmmaker. Now, as a young man, Capra described himself as, in his words, a Christmas Catholic. But later on, he began to be more engaged with his faith, and he said he wanted his movies to express values that were virtuous. Virtue makes us more truly human. Now, certainly some of the influences on Capra was his politics. He was very much a populist of his time, but also I think he was even a stronger influence with his Catholic faith. The Catholic social teaching in Capra's movies, especially the defense of the human dignity and basic rights. Keep in mind that I think around about 50 years before Pope Leo the 13th had issued his encyclical Rerum Novarum. It was a response to the church, what was going on particularly in Europe and in the Americas, about the Industrial Revolution, capitalism, socialism. What does the church bring in its teaching and reflected on the scriptures and tradition bring to this particular moment? And what that encyclical talks about is how that people have value, not because of the means of production that they produce, not because of how much wealth that they acquire. They have value because they exist. They've been created by God, redeemed by Jesus Christ. Rerum Novarum talks about how there is a right to own property, there's a right to run a business, there's a right to make a profit, but there's no right to exploit other people as objects for profit and gain. Well, this is not explicitly mentioned anywhere by George Bailey. It's clear that these are his values. And this is what he brings to build a culture in which Bedford Falls rest upon. Such as the school of Capra's, I think, filmmaking. He makes this point without being preachy, without even being overtly religious. It is this culture of life and of virtue that makes George Bailey's life wonderful. And we hear this expressed, which I think is the best quote in the entire movie, with all due respect, with Zuzu and the bells ringing and angels getting their wings. It's when George's brother Harry offers a toast. He says,
"To my big brother George, the richest man in town."
George and Mary are not rich materially, but they're rich in what matters most. The values of family, friends, community, which is beyond any price tag. So we have to ask ourselves when we watch this movie, whether it's for the first time or for the 100th time, what type of culture do we want to live in? And what are the values that we're living to make that culture possible? Now, a bit of a side note. Jimmy Stewart put on hold a highly successful film career to serve in the United States Army in World War II. He was a bomber pilot. First as a plane commander, then as a squadron commander. He flew 20 combat missions over Nazi-occupied Europe. This eventually led to him suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, and eventually by the end of the war he actually was grounded. He was not able to fly in combat. And It's a Wonderful Life is the first movie he makes after the war is over. He's trying to see if he can restart his career, and he has serious doubts about that. He's also still dealing with the effects of PTSD. To the question of whether or not he was able to restart his career, the answer to that question is certainly yes. He would go on to star in other classic films such as The Man Who Knew Too Much, Vertigo, Rear Window, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. He retired from acting in 1991 at the age of 83. And he died 6 years later, one of the most beloved Hollywood stars of his generation. Certainly this is a family-friendly film. It is rated PG for some thematic elements, particularly the issue about suicide. We see George as a boy is slapped around by an adult briefly. Also, we see George later on in the film, he has an emotional meltdown in front of his wife and children. However, there is no profanity, there is no nudity. The film is 2 hours and 10 minutes. It is originally filmed in black and white. with a DVD version. I guess you can colorize it if you wish. Now, why you would want to do that, that's up to you, but I'm kind of a bit of a purist when it comes to that sort of thing. You can, for parents, you can watch this with your children, although it may be a little bit over the heads of some of the younger ones. As I always recommend, either for parents, either review it yourself before you watch it with your children, or watch it with them and pause it to explain maybe any parts of it that might prove difficult. It's a Wonderful Life is available in DVD. In fact, there's a remastered version for the 75th anniversary. So I have a copy here that's also available on Blu-ray, Amazon Prime, YouTube, but also in these days leading up to Christmas, it's going to be available on cable television for free in these coming days. So enjoy the movie, and God bless you and keep you safe.